So Shalom Aleichem. I jumped it by just a half a second. I hope I'm not in trouble. Okay. Anyway, everybody okay? Wonderful. I'm very, very glad to see you. And as we're meeting together and going to learn a little bit from the Torah, Yom HaAtzmaut is going out. Yom HaAtzmaut is the Day of Independence for the State of Israel. And I look very much forward to the day when Jews everywhere will recognize this day as a holy day on the same level as Pesach or Shavuot or even Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. I mean, in Sukkot. It really is a holy day, the reestablishment and the independence of the State of Israel. And there's a lot of good, hard evidence to back that statement up. But in honor of Yom HaAtzmaut, Independence Day, I want to read one psalm. We can't begin, I can't even begin to tell you, to get across to you, how unbelievably important Yom HaAtzmaut is this day. But I want to read one psalm in celebration of Yom HaAtzmaut, and it's Psalm 98. So, Mizmor, a psalm. Sing a new song to Hashem, for He has done wondrous things. He is saved by His right hand and by His holy arm, and Hashem has made His salvation known. He has displayed His righteousness in the sight of all the nations. He remembered His loving kindness and His faithfulness to the house of Israel. All the ends of the earth have seen the victory of our God. Shout for joy to Hashem, all the earth. Burst into song, sing with joy, play music to Hashem on the harp with the sound of singing, with trumpets and the sound of the shofar. Shout for joy before Hashem, the King. Let the sea and all that is in it thunder, the world and all who live in it. Let the rivers clap their hands, the mountains sing together for joy before Hashem, because He is coming to judge the earth. He will judge the world with justice, and He will judge the peoples with equity. Straightness. Okay. So anyway, Yom HaAtzmaut, very, very important day, very important holy day. And a good day, what a good day that as it's going out, I mean, it's almost finished here where we're recording, and which is 8 hours already behind the State of Israel. Okay, so it's over there. But what a good day for us to begin a study of a new work, a study of one of the great sages of Israel, a great rabbi of Israel, and his name, Rabeinu Bachya. He's known as Rabeinu Bachya, and any rabbi who gets, because usually we only refer to Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu, and Rabbeinu meaning our rabbi. So he gets this title, and everybody refers to him as Rabeinu Bachya, meaning that all Israel really accepts what teaching he gave us. So this book is called Chovot HaLevavot. The Torah of the duties or the obligations that are in the heart, by Rabeinu Bachya ben Yosef ibn Paquda. Okay? Now why Ibn? Ibn is Arabic for son of. Okay? It's interesting because Ibn in Hebrew, if we spell it in Hebrew, it's Even, which means a stone, a rock. So that's interesting play. It was originally written in Arabic by Rabeinu Bachya, which we'll explain that in a minute. And it was translated into Hebrew. And if you have this set of books that's put out by Feldheim, and by the way, they're not in print right now, and don't be a crazy person and go to Amazon where they're selling copies of this book for $650, $800. Don't do that. Wait, either Feldheim will reprint it or someone else will reprint it or something. Or just, while we're doing the series, take some notes. And try to absorb it. Anyway, it was translated from the Arabic into the Hebrew, and in this book we have the Hebrew text, and then we have an English translation by Rabbi Daniel Haberman. But it was originally translated from the Arabic into Hebrew by Rabbi Yehuda ibn Tibon, okay? The son of Tibon. So let's just read a brief introduction from the author and get when Rabeinu Bachya. Where was he at, and what was he doing, and what's important about him? Actually, we know very, very little about him, actually, in his personal life. We do know from their forward in this book, it says, Rabeinu Bachya ibn Paquda's Duties of the Heart is a powerful work that can help you attain, it says, a more uplifted state of mind than the one you were in before studying it. It is a book about inwardness and about one's conception of God. It's about reflection and gratitude. It's about trust and sincerity. It's about discipline and love. And it is a book all about the inner life of a believer. Rabeinu Bachya wrote this book in the last third of the 11th century, so he's almost exactly 1,000 years ago. We don't know much about him in the way of any biographical details. We know that he lived and he wrote this book in Saragossa, Spain. And that he also served there in Saragossa as what's called a dayan. A dayan, and this is telling us something, a whole lot about him. To be recognized as a dayan is a chief rabbinical judge. In other words, he could be a judge in a court of halakha, which means he knew his stuff very, very well, okay? So it says, we know that he lived in Saragossa, Spain. He served as a dayan, and yet it says, they make a very good point here, and it's so very true. It says, after reading his book, in which he addresses the reader most warmly, one cannot help but begin to count him as a close friend and even a mentor. And that's the way we need to look at him, because when I study great rabbis like this, and like the Ramchal and others, it's almost like they sit with me. It really is, and I hope that we can make that kind of come alive here. Something I forgot to do at the very start, we need to actually dedicate this particular section of learning, at least tonight, to a really wonderful lady who was a Torah student for many, many years out in Odessa, named Alice Richardson. And she has passed away, and we need to dedicate it for the elevation of her soul, and it will be a nice thing. And also that we study correctly, and I always mean to mention this at the first, and we're going to find out that it's so important because it's going to be over and over and over again that he mentions this. This is what this whole work is all about the intentions of our heart. And the intentions of our heart should be in studying this wonderful rabbi and his giving forward of the Torah, that we should be studying in order to please Hashem. In order to please Hashem, and in order that we can learn how to live a life, how to do in order to please Him also. Okay? Okay. He goes on, he says, in this introduction by the author, or the translator, excuse me, that he wrote it in such a way, he says, as to be useful for both an advanced student like himself, or even for a novice. He writes in his introduction, I decided to write the duties of the heart down in a book. So I'm 2 steps ahead of him already. He comes to remind me to dedicate the show to Alice Richardson, and it's okay. It's okay, I did it already.
Oh.
Okay. So between here and no, it's okay. It's all right. Well, he may want to edit that out because it shows the control room was not listening to what's being, listening to,
He was on the phone.
Oh, he was on the phone, okay.
I have the sound down here, so don't.
Oh, well, that's good because I don't want to hear it back.
Yeah.
So I decided to write the duties of the heart, he says, down in a book. Listen to what he says. It's unbelievable. So that I might expect of myself always to know these duties of the heart and bring myself to perform them. A book that would spur on the observant person, okay, to do better, and also to stir up the indifferent person, to bolster the beginner and show the way to those who are perplexed. And I wrote it to enlighten myself as well as to stimulate the simple and the negligent among the people of our faith. So, Chovot HaLevavot became a favorite among all the Jewish people, and this is how he became accepted as Rabeinu, our rabbi, our master, our teacher, Bachya. All right? It became a favorite among both simple Jews and the great luminaries of Judaism alike. It mentions here that Rabbi Yosef Karo wrote Shulchan Aruch, and he was an unbelievable Kabbalist. His Magid instructed him to read daily from duties of the heart in order, listen to what he said, in order to subdue the Yetzer Hara and to overcome the power of the Yetzer Hara. That's very, very good advice. In fact, the way I first became, these books sat on my shelves for many years, and I studied them many years ago, and put them back on the shelf, and then have been involved in so many other studies and so many other works. And one day I'm reading Rabbi Shalom Arush's Ganei Emunah, the Garden of Emunah, and he gets to a place and he makes a statement, especially about trusting in Hashem for your finances. And he said, and if you're still having problems, he said, even after everything I've taught you here, if you're still having problems, then by all means go to the Gate of Trust by Rabeinu Bachya and learn 3 lines of that gate, okay, every day. And I said, well, that's interesting. I said, Rabeinu Bachya, oh yeah, I have his books. So I went and I got them out and I looked it up, and sure enough, there's a whole section, because it's written in gates. There are 10 gates, okay? And so there's a whole section about the gate of trust in God. And so I opened it. Absolutely unbelievable what he is saying. And so that's what I started studying, that gate, and that's kind of what brought me to the point of this would be a good thing for us to study together, okay, certain things. At the same time, I want to make a disclaimer here, because just because we're starting with it, it doesn't mean I'm going to go line by line, comma by comma, period by period, and because the very first gate is the gate of the unity of God. And we have to understand, Rabeinu Bachya is a contemporary like of the Rambam, all right? What was it that possessed both the European and both the Christian and the Muslim world of the Mediterranean in the 11th century? It was Greek philosophy, okay, where everything had to be proven by reason. Nothing was actually taken on faith, and everything had to be absolutely proven by reason, and all of these things. So much of Rabeinu Bachya's introduction, or not introduction, but his section, his gate of the unity of Hashem, which is actually the basis for everything. If you don't believe that Hashem is one, then you can't figure anything else out. But he is having to address all of those. He is addressing all of those different mindsets of his day that mostly come from Greek philosophy and other pagan philosophies. I find that difficult. Now, I used to. 25 years ago, I wouldn't have found it difficult at all to go through them, and I could understand why we have to reason this out and why we have to establish all of these different reasons for this and reasons for that. But I think in a completely different way now. And I have a feeling that the vast majority of the students of the Torah that study with me, the vast majority of them also think in a completely different way now. And it almost becomes tiresome to have to go back and study and go through all of these different reasons why this or reasons why that and all of this. When you think to yourself where you are now, you think to yourself, those things don't even matter. They don't even matter anymore. Nobody has to come and prove to me the existence of Hashem. Nobody has to prove to me that He's one. Nobody has to prove any of those things. But in Rabeinu Bachya's day, obviously he did have to. And when we're dealing like what we were talking about earlier with other people who are not where we are and who are not Torah-minded people, or even if they're Torah-minded people, they still aren't Torah-thinking people, then sometimes you do have to speak in these ways. So we will go through them. We're going to go through and at least get the main points that he's making, because it is, as he will tell us, it is the basis for everything else that he wrote. Okay? All right. So we saw what Rabbi Yosef Karo, what his Magid instructed him, to read daily from Chovot HaLevavot in order to subdue the Yetzer Hara and to overcome its power. The holy Ari, the Arizal, Rabbi Yitzhak Luria, required of his disciples, of his students, to study this book on a daily basis. These are big rabbis we're talking about. These are not in some backwater town. These are big rabbis. Study this book on a daily basis for this reason: in order to awaken your heart to the most awesome God. Okay? Rabbi Yonah Landsofer, who is the author of Me'il Tzedakah, wrote in his ethical will, he wrote a will, that a person should immerse himself in the duties of the heart daily. For from that book one can acquire the inner essence, he says, of the select qualities that are actually necessary for serving Hashem. One must delve into the book more deeply, he says, than one would delve into the study of Negaim and Ohalot. These are two very difficult tractates of the Talmud, okay, and other profound systems of thought. Rabbi Eliyahu is the Gra, the Gaon of Vilna, a name familiar to everybody. It says of him that he was fond of Menorat HaMaor and Chovot HaLevavot, the duties of the heart. He liked this book. Rabbi Pinchas of Koretz, a great Hasidic Rebbe, learned the duties of the heart 1,000 times. And only then did he attain the level that he reached as a great tzaddik. Wow, did you get that? He learned the duties of the heart 1,000 times, and only then attained the level that he reached. Rabbi Elimelech of Lizhansk advises us, with fear and awe one should engage each day in the study of Sifrei Musar, books of Musar, books of the ethical teachings of the Torah, such as Reshit Chokhmah, Shnei Lukot Abrit, and Chovot HaLevavot, the duties of the heart. All of these great, unbelievably great rabbis were fans of this book. Not just fans, they studied it on a daily basis. The grandson of the Chassam Sofer tells us that for about a quarter of an hour before each shiur, each Torah lesson that he gave, he would study with the students a passage from the duties of the heart, always in order to get their intentions in the right place, to fire up their hearts toward God, with awe of God. And almost all of his ethical teachings and practices that he gave forth, now the Chassam Sofer also was an unbelievable Hasidic Rebbe, almost all of his ethical teachings and practices were from the words of this holy book, and it was his wish that his students study it in their youth so as to establish for themselves one clear derech, one clear way in their service of God. Rabbi Mordechai Baneh, the Dayan of Nicholsburg, once said to the Chassam Sofer, "People say of you, Harav mi Pressburg," Harav mi Pressburg means the rabbi from Pressburg, that you are a walking and a living Chovot HaLevavot. You're a walking, living duties of the heart, because he knew it so well. Another one, they're still going through all of these, so let's get all of them. Every one of them says something important. The great Rabbi Chaim Yosef David Azulai, who was known as the Chidah in his Shem Gedolim, great names, writes of Rabeinu Bachya in his Duties of the Heart. Whoever reads in Rabeinu Bachya's books, and even just in his introduction, will note the force of His holiness, and that His words are alive, and that they endure, and that they constantly serve as great lights. Yerucham Yehuda Leib Perelman, author of Or Gadol, the Great Light, and he was known as the Gadol from Minsk. Not Brisk, but Minsk. Okay? Said as follows, Chazal, meaning the sages have said, if a man sees that suffering comes upon him, he should examine his conduct. Now this is a quote from the Talmud, Barakot 5a. And listen to his answer, his addition to this. So if a man sees that suffering comes upon him, he should examine his way, his conduct. Got it? And Rabbi Perelman said, there can be no such examination that is more thorough than through the study of the book, Duties of the Heart, which analyzes in fine detail every human drive and action. And concerning, he says, one who has never read the Duties of the Heart, Rabbi Yaakov Yisrael Kanievsky, the Steipler Rav, once wrote, whoever has not seen the lights of the holy words of Chovot HaLevavot, the Duties of the Heart, will be missing very much. He will be deficient on the inside in the purity of all that is holy. So those are some really, really great recommendations from some really, really great Torah sages through the ages. He goes on in his introduction, he says, if in reading Rabeinu Bachya, you become aware of the distance between where you are and the high spiritual levels that he talks about and that he discusses, do not be discouraged. And I want to emphasize that. I spent a good deal of today, I should have been preparing in this book, but I got sidetracked. And I spent a good deal of today in a section of Likutei Moharan, the writings of Rebbe Nachman. Of course, he didn't actually write them, but the teachings of Rebbe Nachman, written by Rabbi Natan of Breslov. And the chapter I spent in was this unbelievable teaching of Rebbe Nachman on how the Yetzer Hara wants so hard to discourage you from trying to do anything for Hashem, from thinking about Him, from trying to do anything, from trying to have any kind of inner intention, any of those things. And he went through all of these unbelievable things. And he even said, as soon as you decide that you are going to draw close to Hashem, every obstacle in the world will come at you over and over again, whether it's things out, actual physical things in the world, or problems, all of this, or whether it's just on the thought level, or a relative, or a neighbor, or a friend, and their words to you, on and on and on. Every obstacle that can be comes in your way. And he says you have to know that this feeling that all of this is distancing from you from Him is actually drawing you closer. It's unbelievable what he said. Everything that we think of as that making us farther away from Him, actually, it will draw you closer. And then he goes through these unbelievable teachings Rabbi Nachman did about all of these things, and he goes into all of these different examples of all of these things that will come at you once you decide you want to serve Hashem, once you decide you want to love Him, once you decide you want to be with Him and come close to Him. And he said, you need to know that every tzaddik went through exactly that same path. Exactly. All of those obstacles also were thrown at them. And his main point was you have to resolve yourself every day and be courageous and be determined. And that just one tiny, if we move here, either with our intention, which then leads into our hands and makes an action, okay? Just a hair's breadth, that in all the different universes that are above us, we have traveled thousands of miles closer to Hashem. That's the illustration that he gives. And that just a hair's breadth of movement in this world, because Hashem knows exactly what you're going through. He knows exactly every obstacle that's getting put in your way. He knows exactly all the problems and how difficult it is to serve Him. And a hair's breadth pleases Him so much. It was just beautiful. And in that, you can draw joy. Because, see, your Yetzer Hara will come and tell you, oh, you're not good enough. You can't do that. You didn't do it. And even if you do it, you won't do it right. And you're not going to please him. You're absolutely not going to please him. Well, Rabbi Nachman is coming and telling us just the opposite. That is a lie of the Yetzer Hara to keep you from either wanting to come close to Hashem or even trying to come close to Hashem, trying to move to Him. So this what he's saying here, if while we're studying this book and we see that Rabeinu Bachya is on such an unbelievably high level, we also need to know that at one point in time, Rabeinu Bachya was also on our level and was going through the exact same kinds of obstacles, the exact same kinds of things. And whatever we need to do, do not be discouraged. And certainly don't get depressed. Depression is full-blown Yetzer Hara. Yeah. On the contrary, the very fact that we get a new awareness of where we are and how far we have to go, and we're not there yet, and we can still come closer and all of those things, this new awareness is very positive and is an authentic spiritual feeling that's coming from Hashem. And it may be an important beginning for you, okay? Because we begin every moment. Every single moment is a beginning. And if a voice within you should suggest to you that you are incapable of attaining those levels, Rabeinu Bachya's response is that there is still value in the study. Even though you may at this point in time, that may be right. Maybe you're not capable at this point in time. But there's still value in the reading, in the study, and there's still much you can do. Quoting from Duties of the Heart in gate number 8 in paragraph 2, he says, what he cannot realize in deed, if you can't do it in deed, you should absolutely master in knowledge and express longing for in your speech and yearn for in your heart. Very, very interesting introduction by the translator. Daniel Haberman. Now, speaking of the translation, with all due respect, and absolutely, this is just a pet peeve of mine. What we have here is not the original. The original is written in Arabic that I can't read, okay, that I certainly couldn't translate from Arabic. Translated by the great Rabbi Yehuda ibn Tibon into Hebrew. So I do have the Hebrew, but that's still a translation. Translated into Hebrew. And then translated again for us by Rabbi Daniel Haberman into English. I have to say I'm not the translation into English is good. I'm not trying to say it's not good. It's a good translation. But when I'm reading the Hebrew side of the page, I'm not completely and totally head over heels in love with the English translation. Okay, so I reserve the right to from time to time go to at least the first level of translation in the Hebrew side of the page and see if there's a little something different that we can notice. What?
You can tweak it.
Yeah, I'm sure we will tweak it. I'm sure of that. But this is the problem with all translations, because all translations are subjective. But anyway, it will be okay. All right, the very next time that we're together, we will actually get into the introduction of Chovot HaLevavot from the author, Rabeinu Bachya himself, and begin to try to understand what it is that he wants us to learn and why he wrote this book and what it is he wants us to get out of it. And I promise you it will be interesting. You will see that he's really and truly cutting to the very heart, duties of the heart, to the very heart of the matter. And it will be familiar to us in the sense that we've been students of the Baal HaSulam, Rabbi Ashlag, for a long time, knowing that the main thing that we have to make sure we're getting correct, and really the only thing that we can change is our intention. Well, what is our intention? Our intention is what's coming from our heart. What is our intention in why we serve Hashem? What is that? And this is really all of those different attributes of the heart that we can, how to put them together and how to get them straightened out. So I think it will be an interesting study. I think it will be extremely helpful to us if we'll pay attention to him. And I still reserve the right to abbreviate the chapters on the unity of God, just because our audience doesn't necessarily need all of this reasoning, but still it'll be beneficial for us to go through it. Okay? All right. So, it's good? Okay. All right, so we'll end this one here, and the very next time we'll start with Rabeinu Bachya's introduction. So, Shalom Uvracha, peace and a blessing.
Shalom.